We are joined on the phone by Mike Vaccaro. He writes for the New York Post. Mike, let's start with the big blockbuster move as the New York Yankees move Andrew Miller to the Cleveland Indians. Yankees are sellers at the deadline for the first time since the 80s. Was this the right move for the franchise?
Oh, I think it was 100%. I don't think there's any question they weren't going to win the World Series this year. They're going to have a tough time the next year or two, which covers Andrew Miller's contract. I think that they not only maximize what they could get for Aroldis Chapman, but maximize what you could get for Andrew Miller. And now they have 7 top 100 prospects. And look, there's no guarantee any of those guys are going to be Derek Jeter, but you certainly put yourself in position to have a new kind of renaissance with some young, controllable players, which is something the Yankees haven't done in decades. So it's I think it was the right decision. I really do. Even as hard as it was for the Yankees to acknowledge that they're not contenders this year, I think it was the right thing to do.
You know, Mike, I got to tell you, I'm missing George a little bit. The future of the Yankees is the way that they're running it right now. It's kind of the opposite of the boss's old theory. Is there more to this new wave of baseball on how to build champions, or the new Yankees just having no other choice? What is behind this?
Well, it's becoming less and less likely that you're going to be able to buy your way out of your problems. I mean, certainly back in the old man's day, there were no limits, and free agents knew that if they waited till their free agency, the Yankees would probably come down and swoop them with the best offer. Now, teams are locking players up. I mean, Steven Strasburg would go on and on of the young players that maybe 15 years ago would have waited till get to spring to free agency, but now they like where they're playing, they like their situations, and they allow themselves to go out of free agency at a young age. And so your choice for the Yankees then is you try and buy free agents on their second contract, in which time they're 32, 33, and you wind up with a roster like they have now, with a bunch of non-useful players cluttering the roster, hindering progress from young players. So I think that's the way of baseball now, is that you can't just live for the moment. And let's not forget, there's a lot of poetry written about George Steinbrenner. He had a lot of lousy baseball teams by doing it that way over the course of time.
Right.
And the irony is that it was because he was out of baseball that his baseball people were allowed to promote the core forward to where they were championship caliber. So I think the notion that George would have done things differently is right. I also think that the Yankees would have been in a lot of trouble if they still did things the way George did them.
Mike Vaccaro from the New York Post on the horn with us here, 104.5 The Team. Mike, Carlos Beltran, the word is the Yankees haven't talked to him about his no-trade clause yet. If he's still a Yankee at 401, did they screw this up?
No, I don't think so. Look, you don't want to give parts away for nothing. And I think that's the thing to remember here is, these two relievers, yes, they were a big part of who the Yankees were this year, but they brought back an enormous return. So, look, you're not going to just give Carlos Beltran away. You still got 35 games in Yankee Stadium where you got to try and give people a reason to come see you. So, Carlos Beltran is your best player. Now, it's damning that he's your best player and he's, 36, 37 years old, but that's beside the point. If they can get a good return for him, then absolutely, you make that deal. Same thing with a Brian McCann. But there's no reason to give them away for pennies on the dollar. And I think that's all part of being smart at the deadline. And it's why, so far you got to like what the Yankees are doing. If you get a team that's desperate enough that wants a bat like Carlos Beltran, especially an American League team because he's a lot more useful in a league with a DH, then you do that. But if not, you put him in your lineup every day, and you go from there.
Mike, any other expected moves you think today by the Yankees?
Besides Beltran, I'd be surprised. I mean, I can't imagine. Although there's recently been a clamor for them to do something about Teixeira or A-Rod, even if it's just to release them, I can't imagine that's going to happen today. McCann, look, I mean, if there's it would make sense because you have a catching prospect in the minor leagues. He hasn't exactly had a great tenure with the Yankees, so if you can bring something back for him, but I'd also be very surprised if that wound up happening, especially because it seems like the suitor that people are talking about is the Braves, and they just routinely go against everything the Braves have done in trying to clear the decks the last couple of years to bring back a guy like Brian McCann.
We got Mike Vaccaro of the New York Post with us. He covers New York sports. And, Mike, Jay Bruce, it looks like he's going to be a Met, but now there's rumors of some kind of medical issue, maybe hanging up the trade. Is this a trade that they needed to make, and is it a trade that you ultimately think will go through?
I think it will go through. I mean, it's Nemo had some foot problems earlier in the year, so, I mean, those are the things the Reds are taking a look at. But, is it going to have the kind of impact that Cespedes had from last year? I don't think it will. Bruce is a terrific player, and he gives the one thing the Mets desperately need is a guy who's clutch with runners in scoring position. They're the worst team in baseball with runners in scoring position. He hits 360 with runners in scoring position. So now he's done all that in a very low-profile, low-pressure situation in Cincinnati because they've been terrible all year. But all of that said, he does clutter the outfield picture a little bit for the Mets. They already have a lot of left-handed swinging outfielders, but you know what? The Mets at this point are in a position where they need to get good players, they need to get good hitters, especially if they intend to, make the next few months somewhat relevant. And they should, because their schedule is so user-friendly the last few months of the year, especially the last, 15 or 20 games of the year. If they can just hang around the wild card race, they'll have a great chance to maybe make a final push. But you got to have players capable of doing that. I think with Jay Bruce, they're better than they were yesterday. But it'll be interesting. I don't see he's going to be the kind of savior that Cespedes turned out being last year. I'll say that.
Mike, two questions, actually. First one about Alex Rodriguez. Why don't they just cut him? And the other one is, which of the Subway Series that begins today more important for the Yankees or the Mets?
Well, it's more important for the Mets because I think they still have a legitimate chance. I mean, they're only 2.5 games out of the wild card. And look, they're 6.5 games out of the National League East, but at the deadline last year, the Blue Jays were 8 games out of first place. I mean, things happen. 6.5 games is a week's worth of games, but there's still 9 weeks left of the season. So there's time to do that, and certainly time to make up the 2.5 games in the wild card. For the Yankees, it's kind of just getting used to the new normal. They can still be competitive. It's just that I think they finally realized the idea of, jumping over as many teams as they need to jump over to not only win the East, but also just to get in the wild card position. They just realized that was too much. Alex Rodriguez is, look, I mean, even the Yankees have a hard time just, waving their magic wand and making $21 million appear, which is what would, they'd be on the hook for next year. So there's that. I realize if ever a team could, you would think could do that and not worry about the ramifications of the Yankees, but, it's hard to just call that a sunk cost. Plus, I mean, there is, look, I mean, he still has a couple home runs away from 700. And you would think that if he plays next year, he got a shot at getting to 714, 715. And these are things that, could still matter in terms of drawing people to the ballpark. So, I mean, for the Yankees, that's the things that are holding them up. I think ultimately, I don't think they're going to cut him this year. I'd be very surprised to be the Yankee in 2017, though.
Mike Vaccaro, he writes for the New York Post. So, Mike, we know the Mets players. This is important to them. I'm a Yankees fan. And we've had this debate going all day. Wolf, he's on a pogo stick. Today he's a Mets fan. Whoa. Tomorrow he's a Yankees fan.
No.
As a guy who covers them at ground zero, is it okay to waffle between the Yankees and the Mets?
Is it okay? Sure, of course it is. My father did his whole life. My father goes back to the 3 teams in New York, so he used to root for the Dodgers, Giants, and Yankees. I mean, he had his order of priority if they played each other, but he was a New York fan. He was that way with the Jets and the Giants, too. So I don't think it's a mortal sin. I really don't. I understand there's an appeal to picking one team and, enjoying the kind of trash talk that goes by during stuff like the Subway Series. But
oops, I think we just lose him?
I just lost Mike. I'm gonna put Mike on hold, guys. Let's see if you can get him back. He clearly
lost Mike right when he agreed with Wolf. By the way, no, he validated me completely.